the last 10 years, I've investigated some of the darkest subjects in some of the most dangerous parts of the world. Now it's time to take a hard look at what's really going on in my own country, a country I love. 1 in 20 children in this country have been sexually abused.
And the minute I heard him having this conversation with this man, I knew that he was being groomed. He'd actually been sexually abused by a number of men.
About 14 physical. 13.
Yeah.
Sexual offences against children in England and Wales rose by a third last year.
It becomes quite explicit, even mention of rape.
How old's this one?
She's 11.
1 in 3 girls aged between 13 and 17 with boyfriends have been abused by those boyfriends.
He treated me like I was a dog, so I had to be in the position of a dog.
Do we want to be a country in which it's not safe for a significant minority of our young people?
It can happen to anyone, no matter who you are, little, small, big, happen to anyone.
Everybody has a responsibility to come and tackle what is perhaps one of the greatest problems of the 21st century. I want to separate fact from fiction, rhetoric from reality, and find out where we're heading as a nation and what makes modern Britain. Child sexual exploitation is basically an abuse of power, when a child is manipulated into performing a sexual act in return for something it needs or wants. And that can be money, gifts, drugs, even love. Sadly, 1 in 20 young girls in this country are sexually abused before they reach the age of 18, and mostly by a male not much older than themselves. A staggering proportion of sexual abuse cases in this country refer to children abusing children. It frequently goes undetected and is often dismissed as typical teenage behaviour. Do you think I'm right making a programme about sexual exploitation of young people?
Not many people know about it. No one ever sees about young girls and young lads having sex and doing things.
Teenagers are growing up in a very different environment from the one I grew up in. Technology and social media is changing the way they communicate. And if we really want to understand their world, we need to listen to them. One person who has spent years talking to teenagers is Carleen Furman from Bedfordshire University. She's leading research into peer-on-peer abuse.
When we say abusing a child, certain images often come to people's heads, which is an adult abusing a much younger child.
The man in the raincoat or groups of Asian men, that's not the case, is it?
No, that's not the case in every part of the country, and it's certainly not the case for most young people who are experiencing much more complicated and nuanced types of harm and abuse that we are too quick to dismiss as things like exploration or just boys being boys. Everyone's a bit confused. We don't want to get carried away with ourselves. Teenagers being teenagers. We know that about a third of sexual exploitation cases involve children abusing other children. They don't involve adults, okay? And in some local authorities, they'll find between 50 and 80% of their identified cases are child-on-child.
50 to 80%.
Child-on-child exploitation. How can that be happening?
Do you think, as a society, we're actually aware of what's happening with young people?
We still have people that think if certain behaviours will mean that you're partially responsible for being raped. She was in the park late at night, she shouldn't have been. She was drunk, she had taken drugs. She's already had sex with that person, so that means that she's consented to have sex with me. She was videoed, therefore she's easy. All of these myths, these are pushed out by adults as well as young people. We know professionals who adopt those attitudes. So it's hardly surprising that we have young people who adopt those attitudes.
Do you think that young people's sexual behaviour has changed recently? And do you think maybe the fact that nearly 80% of all porn on the internet shows violence towards women, has that had an effect on the way that young people have sex?
we obviously should be worried about the influence that these images are having on them and the normalising culture that it can create. Not just porn that's made for kind of adult consumption, but the sharing of images. You know, I've reviewed cases where a young person's been sexually assaulted, the image has gone round on phones, and the response has been, well, other boys approaching her for sex, not, we've just witnessed a sexual assault. And some of that's because they're used to seeing images of sexual violence on their phones. There's a detachment maybe around that.
There are so many different areas at play here. There's the sexting, there's the Snapchat where you send a photograph, you could send it to your boyfriend or your girlfriend and it could end up being watched by millions of people. There's the amount of pornography out there, particularly hardcore pornography. There are so many things out there pushing young people to be influenced or maybe behave in a certain way that the lines are really blurred about what's permissible, what's not permissible, what's right and what's wrong. And also, in that melee, I think it allows people who are predatory, who are looking to exploit young people, to be hidden in that mist. One of the most worrying changes is the increase in hardcore pornography now freely available online. The smartphones that children now have can give them direct access to it without their parents ever knowing.
Have you all seen pornography of some kind?
Some kind, yeah.
It's not like it's hard to find.
I know 11, 12-year-olds have got it on the phone.
There's no clear evidence to suggest that, watching porn has any effect on how you view sex or how you have sex. But when you know that 80% of all pornography out there depicts some sort of violence towards women, is it then so surprising that a third of young women in this country, aged between 13 and 17, have experienced some sort of sexual violence from their boyfriends? Pornography certainly isn't new, but what has changed is the age at which children can access it. I'm going to meet a girl who believes her boyfriend's addiction to porn led to an abusive relationship.
Can you tell me how you came to be in a relationship where someone the same age as you abused you?
Well, I met him once with a load of friends who knew him, and then we all went into town together, so it was sort of like a normal friendship, really. And then we formed a relationship, and then after a few days of being together, it was quite normal, so we were alright, and then he started to get a bit abusive then.
So what did he do, though? How did he control you?
He told me who to go out with, what to wear, and he was amongst people that did drugs and stuff like that, so he'd want me to take drugs.
How did this 15-year-old first introduce porn into your relationship?
We were having sex one day and he said that it wasn't good enough, and then he showed me a video of pornography and said that's how we should do it. All the positions that they did, I had to do. He treated me like I was a dog, so I had to be in the position of a dog and I had to do exactly what was on the pornography.
Where would he make you watch this?
In his room.
What, his parents' house?
Yeah, his parents weren't in.
Did he say that he'd had other girlfriends that he'd watched porn with?
Yeah, he said that.
Did you realise that this 15-year-old had control over you?
No, it felt normal because it's what you normalise to after a long period of time, because, you know what I mean, if you don't know any different at that age, you didn't really have any relationships that often, so obviously being that's my first proper relationship, that's what I go by, knowing that it's normal, that was love to me.
Were you in love with him?
Yeah, I was at that age. It sounds stupid, but that's how I felt. I really liked him, so that's why I did anything that he asked of me.
Can you give me some examples of the other things that he asked you to do?
He used his mum's sex toys to make pornography. He asked that of me a few times.
Do your family know about this?
Yeah.
How do they feel about it?
I don't really think they said much, to be honest. I think they said it's my issue and I needed to sort it out by myself because I got myself into this situation so I could get myself out.
You going to school while this was going on?
I went to school sometimes, but when he had days off college, I would go to his house because he told me to, so we would just stay at his house a lot of the time. So I was missing out on a lot of school.
Sadly, Becky's abuse didn't start at 15. How young were you when you first went online?
12, like online properly at 12, because I went on dating sites and stuff like that, so started seeking out for attention because at home my life was quite difficult, and then a lot of men sort of found me on other sites like MSN, even though I hadn't given out my details.
What kind of things did they used to say?
One of them said to get a shower hose and to put it, in my private area to masturbate.
Did your family know that you were doing this?
No idea.
I've been told that there are games out there
Yeah.
that encourage young people to get naked and eventually masturbate themselves, on Skype or on screen. Have you ever played any of those games?
Yeah, there was one occasion where I was on webcam just going through by myself, and then one of them popped up, but I thought it was just a game, like an advert, because no one was online, so then I just started playing it. Because it started off really easy, then it would progress quite hard.
Can you tell me?
Yeah, they would ask to masturbate with pencils, to get naked completely, stuff.
In front of the camera?
Yeah.
And it would be streamed?
Yeah, well, it was recorded back to me at the end, and that's how I knew, obviously, it was not just an advert or a game.
Think you're particularly vulnerable?
Yes, because I didn't really have a lot of people in my life. It was just someone to talk to, for someone to love me, even if it's for bad reasons. I can't do it, I actually can't.
Listening to Becky, I went from shock to anger to real sadness. Becky, from a very early age, was clearly looking for love or security, and by her own admission, she went on the net first, and she liked the attention that she was given by these people, and unfortunately, she is a perfect example of a victim of child sex abuse, not only online but also in terms of the relationship, the on-peer relationship. Reported sexual offences against children went up by a third in England and Wales last year. But the sad fact is we just don't know how many children are being abused in this country, because often they're too scared to come forward, or the perpetrator has control over them, or sadly, they don't even know that they're being abused.
Horrendous sexual abuse.
The normalisation of extreme sexual behaviour makes it harder for young people to distinguish between exploring their own sexuality and abuse. And it makes it easier for adult groomers to capitalise on this confusion. Grooming doesn't just happen to girls, it can also happen to boys. If you're young and vulnerable, it can happen at any age. I'm on my way to meet a brave young man who was groomed when he was 19 years old. Although not a child anymore, JJ grew up in an atmosphere like many teenagers where the lines of consent were blurred. Do you think that what we call consensual sex, so someone saying yes to sex, that doesn't really exist anymore?
Yeah, sometimes now it's like you don't have a choice. That's the way it is now. It's just happening. That's about it.
If you have sex against your will, that's rape, isn't it?
Yeah, physically, yeah. I don't agree with it because obviously it happened to myself, obviously, like I said as well. Like in my situation, I didn't know. I was too stupid to know what was going on around me.
Do you think that you were vulnerable at school?
Very vulnerable. If someone asked me to do something, I'd go and do it. I'm not going to lie, yeah. Very vulnerable.
What about now? You don't feel like that now?
Now I feel like I'm more strong than myself. Like I can tell people no. Like back then I was too scared. I was too nervous and that. I didn't know how to say no.
Similar to young people of his generation, JJ thought that certain sexual behaviour was normal and was unable to recognise abuse when it happened to him. So, we're talking about another guy here, yeah?
Yeah.
You buy his stuff?
Yeah, he bought me stuff. Anything I wanted, it was there. It's just handed to me on a plate. If I wanted a drink, go shop. He'd run to the shop and run back. I didn't think that in Covent until he started acting a little bit weird around me.
A lot of people be watching this, they won't understand the control he had over you.
I was too scared to leave. It might sound, I was a bit too scared to leave. Like, I didn't know back then. I was just too shook. I didn't know what was going to happen. I've never had someone in my life that can take control of me like that. Didn't think it could ever happen, but it did.
But your friend's not worried?
Yeah, my family started noticing stuff and my friends started noticing stuff weird until they confronted me about it. But obviously, I kept denying it because I didn't want them to find out, because they might think the wrong thing of me. They might think, oh yeah, he's disgusting, this, that and the other. That's what I felt. Just felt isolated. That's when you feel like you're no one now. You're nothing. You just feel like you've just got everything just taken away from you. Just by that one thing. You feel like your dignity, your pride, everything's just gone.
I think a lot of people out there think that there are men out there doing it to girls, but they're not so much aware that it can happen between two guys.
To anyone. Anyone. No matter who you are, little, small, big, happen to anyone. No matter who you are. If they find a weakness in yourself, they try to control it, gain energy of it. That's basically what they do. As soon as they find your weakness, that's it.
Mate, I just say, that's very moving. You moved me, mate. I was just saying that you did. You're a very brave man.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. I didn't know.
I just think JJ is an incredibly brave young man. You know, there are people out there that think bravery is, you know, dodging bullets or beating someone up, beating three guys up when it's 3-on-1. I think for him to have gone on television and spoken so openly about what happened to him makes him a very brave young man, and I'm very proud of him. I think his family are, rightly so. But for me, it only confirms just how prevalent grooming is in our society. And unfortunately, he is not an isolated incident. The internet has given predators the perfect hiding place. It's made it easier for them to find and groom their victims. I'm on my way to meet the parents of a boy who was just 13 when they discovered he was being groomed and abused.
And the minute I heard him having this conversation with this man, I knew that he was being groomed. And it was the following week that we learned he'd actually been sexually abused by a number of men.
He's 13 years.
Yeah.
Exploring his sexuality, their son entered online chat rooms and, innocent to the dangers, fell into the hands of predatory sex offenders. Was he bullied for coming out?
He was, so he became a lonely boy, and these men were obviously talking to him, you know, and they were telling him they love him, your parents don't understand you, your friends don't understand you, I was the same age.
I was like you are at your age.
And I can help you. And, you know, they said all the things he wanted to hear. Then, once we knew, we were taking his phones, we were taking his laptops, and he was becoming a prisoner in his own home. And we made him miserable because we'd taken, we'd taken these people away that were going to keep him safe.
And I've spoken to some.
You've spoken to them? The groom men that groomed your son?
Yeah. And they just, in one case, would point blank refuse to go away. I could get a text from my son saying, "Will you stop doing that? These are my mates. Get used to it."
How is your son now?
He understands the realities of what happened to him. Sorry.
Sure. Do you think if you hadn't had that phone conversation that this would still be carrying on, or...?
Our son would be dead. And there is no doubt that our son would not be alive, because there are people he would have gone to have seen who could not have allowed him to return. Because if he had returned to us, we would have found out where he'd been. And he has actually said himself, if it wasn't for Mum and Dad, I'd be dead.
There would be people listening to what you've told us and saying, oh, it wouldn't happen. It wouldn't happen to me. It wouldn't happen to my daughter. It wouldn't happen to my son.
But it can happen to any family, from any background, any child of any age, any intellect.
As a parent, how do you know it's not already happening to your child? Because these people create a new world for your child. And as a parent, you're not invited in.
As a father, I can't help thinking just how powerless that boy's parents were. They tried everything in their power to stop those people getting to their son. And there was this overwhelming feeling of anger and sadness that they had failed their son. And I have to say, I don't think they did. I just think we all underestimate the power that a predator has over its victim. And it just goes to show that those people can get to anyone, anywhere, and even in your own home.
Changing technology means it's difficult for parents to keep up with what their children are doing on the internet. Predators know this and exploit it. I'm meeting detectives at Norfolk's Safeguarding Online team, and I'm about to find out just how graphic and disturbing these explicit online conversations between adults and children can be.
Can you tell me what's on the screen?
This is him contacting a number of children who are probably between 11 and 14.
11 and 14.
That's right.
And how old was the perpetrator, or is the perpetrator?
He's definitely an adult. He's well into his late 20s.
So she says hi, he goes, what are you wearing? Top and leggings. Has he put up a fake ID?
Yeah, she thinks it's a younger male who's also in his teens.
The suspect says, has your period started?
Yeah, and there's all sorts of references where he knows full well the victims are children, and it becomes quite explicit, even mention of rape.
He wants to come deep in her and make a baby, and this person is very, very young, right?
She's talking about being in school the following day. He talks about how much money he earns.
I'll spend my money on you.
Could you imagine being with someone my age?
He's now come clean about how old he is, yeah? How did you find out about this perpetrator?
A suspect had been uploading indecent images of children online, and that allowed us a search warrant at the home address where he lived with a partner and children.
He's grooming very young girls online, talking about coming inside them and giving them babies, and he's got a partner and kids.
That's correct, yeah.
Can we see what else he said to other people, please?
Yes.
He says how hard he is. He asks if he wants to ride my cock. He wants a sister to be involved as well, right?
That's right, yeah.
Love to see you finger that pussy. How old's this one?
She confirms that she's 11 later on in the chat here. We generally find that each suspect who is prepared to do that sort of thing will have thousands of chat logs, and they will be speaking to hundreds, if not thousands, of victims.
Has he ever made contact with any of his victims?
We know so far from the investigation that he has made attempts to meet up with victims. It's a huge problem and hasn't been taken seriously enough in previous years, and I think we all need to be open and honest and say not enough resources have been put into tackling this.
Since making this film, the abuser has been arrested and is awaiting trial while the investigation into online grooming continues.
Teenage years are a confusing, challenging enough time as it is. But if someone's abused, it can affect them for life. And if they're not given any help, it can lead to a repeat cycle of abuse.
The situation is made worse by the fact that victims often don't realise that they're being abused. Helping them to understand that they are is part of breaking that cycle. Kathy from Catch-22, a charity that supports vulnerable young people, has been helping teenagers come to terms with their exploitation for the past 5 years.
When you approach them, how difficult is it to get them to talk?
Well, one of the biggest things about CSE and child sexual exploitation is young people don't feel that they're being exploited. They feel like they are in control of the situation, that it is on their terms, and they're getting from this what they want from it. And, you know, and they see that professionals involving themselves in this is doing something to break
harm that.
To break that relationship.
And these people are incredibly clever and skilled at getting access to young people.
Yeah, of course they are. And the internet gives them one really good opportunity to access them. It's also the same on video games,
Where you can talk to
where someone is talking to your child and you don't know as a parent who they are and what they're saying. And these people can have a very, very, very fast impact, and children can be groomed very quickly, so they can be taken down a path of no return within 20 minutes.
Shouldn't that be a concern to everybody in this country?
Absolutely everybody, yeah. And, you know, I've got children. I don't want them to be contacted. As a parent, I know that I have to understand what apps and what social media my children are using, how they're using them, and who's contacting them.
If the rates of child exploitation are as high as we think they may be, what's the future?
I think what you've got is a generation of children, young people who aren't able to form healthy relationships. And if we don't do something about this, and fairly quickly, that number of young people will expand and get bigger, and we'll end up with a dysfunctional society.
In a way, as a society, are we partially playing into the hands of groomers and abusers?
Yeah, I think we probably are. I think we're somehow making our children more vulnerable. We don't understand the consequences of smartphones, and
it's like an experiment. There's an experiment going on here, isn't there? And we have no idea what the outcome is going to be.
No idea.
It's a problem that isn't going to go away and is going to get worse unless it's addressed, unless it's tackled, and unless we educate people about just how pervasive it is and just how many people there are out there that are preying on our young people. I realise now I had no idea how prevalent child sexual exploitation is in Britain. Maybe talking about it more openly is one way we can begin to tackle the problem. Someone brave enough to talk to me about her experiences is 16-year-old Amber from South East London.
Amber, what's it like living around here?
I just think it's horrible. Say a group of boys, they just look at you as like, you just feel so intimidated and so small compared to them.
Well, how do you think the boys around here view girls of your age?
I think they just view us as all as their sex toys, to be honest with you.
Sex toys?
Yeah, you either do it or there's a consequence.
What kind of consequences?
Like their boys would like hold force onto you, like pull you back while they perform their sexual act on you.
But they're committing rape. That's a rape.
In this generation, people just believe it's normal. Many girls are being raped nowadays.
How old are the girls that this is happening to?
There has been a few that's been like 10, 11, 12, up to that.
Do you know anyone close to you that's been raped?
Yeah, I have 2 people and they've both been raped quite repeatedly a few times in their life.
You're saying it's happening every day. Do they not think that they're raping the girl when they do that?
They know what they're doing, but they just do it not for fun. They do it to get ratings off of their boys and stuff. And if they don't do it, then their boys are just like, oh, what are you, sort of thing. Like, you're nothing in this group.
So if you don't behave in a sexually violent way to a woman, then you're less of a man.
Yeah.
Has anyone ever tried to rape you?
Yeah, there has been an experience where I have nearly been raped, but I did get away from it, luckily.
How pressured did you feel into having sex when you were young?
I felt very pressured because he asked me quite a few times, and I mean, I was under the influence of alcohol as well, but he didn't drink anything, but he just kept asking me. At first I was saying no because I was too scared to do stuff like that, and then he said, I wouldn't call it pressure, he just kept telling me how no one will know how he loves me, and then when I did do it, he just broke up with me that same day.
That day?
Yeah.
Do you think he just used you?
Yeah, definitely.
What about, the sexting thing? Did you ever receive obscene pictures from people that you knew?
Many times. All my social networking sites, there'd be at least 5 pictures of boys sending me nudes of themselves and stuff like that.
Have people ever taken pictures of you?
No, but I have made a mistake once with my ex-boyfriend. I did send him a picture of me like that. He sent it to all my friends in school and I had loads of people coming up to me.
Was that embarrassing?
Very embarrassing. I didn't go to school for quite a few months. And,
really?
I missed out on my education a lot. And I just got bullied because of it so much.
Well, people were showing it, laughing about it, stuff like that.
Yeah, and I'd get all these messages like, oh, you're a slag, you're this, you're that. But I just ended up growing up and dealing with life. I made the mistake, I had to deal with it.
I'm still reeling from what Amber told me, but also just the matter-of-fact way that she went about it, she's talking about quite, extreme sexual behaviour, talking about rape being commonplace and that, girls just accept that it's going to happen as a rite of passage. I just think all the effort that went into the emancipation of women is being totally lost on a generation of young people.
The impact of sexual abuse at a young age can be catastrophic. It can shatter all self-worth and force victims into a downward spiral of further exploitation. A young woman who we'll call Sue was just 13 when she was sexually abused.
Still 12, 13, 14?
12, when he was grooming me, touching my leg, and I just turned 13 when he had sex with me.
Right. 13. You think that had an effect then on how you viewed sex and how you viewed men, boys?
I was really confused back then, from the feelings I was had for him, and not just him as well. After all that shit happened, I was 14 just turned 14, and I had 28-year-old men literally forcing themselves on me and coming on to me, and they knew how old I was. And when I think of it now, it makes my blood boil, it really does.
Sue came to view sexual exploitation as normal. It led her to a dark world of further abuse at the hands of criminal gangs.
And how did you get involved with gangs in the first place?
Well, they flirt with you at first. They make you feel they want a bit of you, they do
feel special,
yeah. They make you feel good, make you feel wanted.
Then what's the next step?
Money.
It's grooming, isn't it?
Yeah, of course it's grooming, 100%. They groom me. It goes in that order. And then even through the money process, they're still flirting, they're still cuddling, until they get that one bit to say so. Yep, a one green light to do anything, then they'll just, even if they get a little kiss, even if they get a little touch of the tit, they know they're in.
I think you're passed around
Is that right?
Yeah, like a rag doll.
Like a rag doll.
Yeah, they'll ring you up and say, look, there's a line-up, and if there's no one about and they can't get anyone else, then obviously I'll go and do it.
Say, I'll do it. What do you mean? Have full sex blowjobs?
No, just blowjobs. Yeah, literally, they'll line up, I'll just go along. I've done everything. You know, literally, there could be like two up, one at the front, one at the back.
What?
At a time, 3.
You have 3 where?
Yeah, like 2 up the front and 1 at the back.
What? Having sex with you at the same time?
Yeah, it's gone that far.
Yeah, but are you willing? Do you think it's a will?
I have to be.
Next question. There you go. You said...
If I had a choice, no, of course I wouldn't do it.
So you're not willing?
No, I'm not willing, no. But I can't say no.
Why haven't you said that?
Well, because obviously I've heard and I've seen, and I got this one.
So they broke your nose, yeah?
Yeah, one of them did, years ago, yeah. Hate them. I fucking hate them.
You hate them?
Yeah, I do. Deep down, of course I hate them, but because I let it happen from early on, it's no going back, is there?
Do you not worry about yourself?
If I do, I'll crumble. Literally.
Right. Okay.
Sorry.
I'm sorry. I shouldn't ask that question.
Just put the wall up. You know, I've got to get on with it. Of course I don't like it. No, it's no life to live.
Sadly, Sue is not alone. There are at least 12,500 girls we know of involved in gangs in Britain today, and 1/3 of them tell stories of gang rape. The sexually exploitative portrayal of girls in gang culture is well documented in music and film. And worryingly, a lot of it seems to permeate through into popular culture.
So Matthew, I mean, my general worry is that kind of attitude that you had in a gang, that now permeates outside of the gangs. It's like a general attitude that a lot of young men at school have towards girls. Kids refer to the girls at school as hoes and bitches.
Yeah, and this is my freak, and I'm like, you can't speak to us, a young lady. They just say, no, she's not, she's a hoe, she kissed someone the other day, and because it's been going on for centuries and they listen to all this gangster rap and all, look at
That's right. Do you think that's a major? Do you think it has a major effect?
Of course, it's an impact. When I was listening to Tupac and C Murder and Woody, you got all these rappers talking about graphic stuff, but them girls, he doesn't know that guy's hurting them girls.
Matthew used to run one of Manchester's most notorious gangs. He's now keen to highlight the routine exploitation that takes place in gang culture.
How many girls would you have on the go?
Normally, my peak was about 5, 6. That's when I was like 15, 16.
You were 15, 16 years. How old were the girls?
15, 16, the same age, and they all knew about each other because they were all friends. One in particular, she used to sell drugs for me, she used to hold my guns. Then she's getting buzzing, oh look what Matthew's giving me to hold, and then
she's been given responsibility, and she's been given what she thinks is trust.
Yeah, it's trust, but it's not trust really, because I don't trust you to keep your mouth closed if police catch you. I just know that someone's going to jail and it's not me. I told him I love him, I gave him, took him to Frankie and Benner's or whatever restaurant, I gave him weed, drink, probably brought him some perfume, some Ugg boots or whatever, but
shoes,
handbags, I love you, yeah, having sex, I love you, you're my baby. But really, if you're my baby, why was I going upstairs in your house?
And what about passing girls around?
Yeah, the trains, they're the ones that you catch at the parties and 10 of your friends have done them and they're not bothered about giving you oral sex.
And how often would that happen?
Mostly on night times when we've finished doing our gang stuff. It's about 10, 11 o'clock and there's nothing really happening, no clubs. We phone up one of them, who you with? You or your friend? If it's just one of them, right, there's 3 of us coming around. Yeah, the door's unlocked, you get a bottle of brandy, some weed. The night's a party.
With her, yeah?
Yeah, with her, she's the
All 3 of you on one of them?
All 3 of us in one go. She's got 2 in her hand, 1 in her mouth. But they think we respect them. But we don't respect you. That's how twisted it is. The girls really think that we respect them, we don't. That's not love, it's abuse.
I think sometimes there is a fine line between what is possibly confused but normal, inappropriate teenage behaviour and what is abuse. I think looking back, a lot of sexual abuse went undetected, but now we're shining more light on it and beginning to understand what it is, and that has to be a good thing.
And now that there is a better understanding of what child sexual exploitation is, police officers are being trained to detect the warning signs. I'm with Sergeant Dave McCormack from the Norfolk Police.
We are seeing things go up now, every day.
But is that because we're now more aware of what's happening, or is it because it is actually quite simply on the increase?
I think it's a bit of both. The officers certainly around Norfolk, have all been trained in how to identify it. We've got child sexual exploitation champions in Norfolk, so they're picking up on the vulnerability risks, which is the early stages that a child could be at risk of child sexual exploitation.
What about parents?
The parents might not be aware of the risks, and they might not be aware of the vulnerabilities that their child is in.
This means proactive communication between the police and the children themselves.
This is an area where grooming takes place. You coming here on a regular basis puts them on the back foot, right?
Absolutely, yeah. And you can just see your age groups. I mean, they're smoking, so he probably around 15 or 16 down there with the bags.
Yeah.
If you look over there,
a lot younger.
They're much younger. Your local beat officers, they can look across the field and they can look at children and they can go, well, I know that's so-and-so, and I know that's so-and-so, and I know they live around the corner. So you build a rapport, they'll start to talk to you, and they'll open up. And that's when you start getting your disclosures, and that's when your sexual offences come to light, individuals targeting some of their friends.
But it seems to me the problem is too big for the police to face alone. Chief Constable of Norfolk, Simon Bailey, is the national lead on child sexual exploitation.
Do you have any idea of the scale of sexual abuse of young people in this country?
Well, this year, so calendar year 2015, I'm anticipating that we will investigate 72,000 allegations of child sexual abuse. That's an 88% increase on the number of reports that we investigated in 2012. But it's the tip of the iceberg. There is no doubt in my mind that more abuse is being perpetrated. In the 1990s, there were less than 10,000 decent images of children in circulation. There's now in excess of 100 million that are now available to be viewed by people on the web. Now you can pay for a child to be abused in another part of the world while you watch that abuse and direct it. And the police services trend lines, those lines that we follow very carefully, which show increases year on year, they, at this moment in time, they are showing no sign of abating whatsoever.
And Simon, is this just the responsibility of the police, or is this a society issue?
Well, I think it's not just the police service that has a responsibility here, because the fact is that by the time a victim comes forward to report the fact they've been abused, the damage is already done. It is an awful, awful state of affairs, which is why, whilst we have taken a lot of criticism of late in terms of our response, whilst I accept it, this is not solely about the police service. And we now have to start looking at it from a fundamentally different perspective. And this is perhaps one of the challenges that we face in terms of the perception of young people in terms of what is now normal. The risks and dangers of sharing nude or lewd images of yourself. Understanding that it's not normal to have multiple partners. To make, for people to understand that, a gang culture, that you would then have to perform sex acts with all the members of the gang before you become a member, is not normal. Everybody has a responsibility to come and tackle what is perhaps one of the greatest problems of the 21st century.
Child sexual exploitation can happen to any child from any background. and the perpetrators certainly don't fit into one stereotype. Our children today are exposed to more sexual imagery, more sexual conversation, and more sexual pressure than ever before. We have to educate them and ourselves to understand what child sexual exploitation actually is and to recognise the warning signs. And we have to encourage our children to come forward if they have to be able to report it without fear of shame. If the police's leading expert into child abuse is telling us we've only seen a tip of the iceberg, then this isn't just a problem for the police, it's a problem for all of us.
If you've been affected by any of the issues raised in this program, go to sky.com/viewer support.